They bombed a school, sheltering families. They fired into crowds of starving people reaching for food. They killed 10 in 2 days while those people begged for aid. They built checkpoints around 8 hubs in the south, far from where most people live. They shot warning rounds as thousands pushed toward the gates. They forced movement, reshaped borders, and called it protection. They burned farms. They torched cars. They spray painted hate onto walls. They killed 3 young men in 24 hours. They stormed homes before dawn. They left blood-stained pillows behind. They used hunger as leverage. They blocked aid for 11 weeks. They allowed just a trickle after the world screamed. They built fences around food. They placed armed guards besides meals. They made survival conditional. They claimed diversion by militants justified starvation. They said control over aid ensured safety. They moved supply lines through military zones. They placed access points near their own lines. They watched panics erupt and bullets fly. They caused chaos and called it order. They displaced tens of thousands in the north. They launched the largest operation since the last uprising. They lit fields on fire. They targeted villages with settlers and slogans. They raised tents in contested land. They did it fast more than ever before. They called it peace. They called it defense. They called it war. But this was not war. This was not self-defense. This was not proportionality. This was policy. This was planning. This was precision targeting of civilians under the cover of counter-terrorism. The hospital still standing, number fewer than 20. The calories per meal dropped below emergency standards. The wounded wait for oxygen that never came. The dead piled high, more than 50,000. The injured climbed past 120,000. The children, 9 of 10 lost in one strike. The mothers buried beneath rubble. The doctors left to scream into silence. The warnings from the UN were clear. The reports from the field were consistent. The conclusions from aid groups were unanimous. The system they built fails the hungry. The model they imposed blocks relief. The checkpoints they control stop supplies. The routes they permit do not reach need. The warehouses were looted out of desperation. The ambulances could not pass. The trucks sat idle at borders. The planes could not land. The sea route was sealed. The land was mined with permits. The aid workers were hunted. The hospitals were shelled. The schools were flattened. The shelters were hit twice. The neutrality of humanitarian work was stripped away. They replaced the UN with contractors. They handed food out through private firms. They called it efficiency, it was exclusion. They called it security, it was control. They called it aid, it was leverage. And when the EU looked on, when Germany spoke, when France turned, they saw what had been done. They read the reports. They counted the dead. They reviewed the maps. They listened to the survivors. They heard the cries. They issued statements. They condemned the strikes. They rejected the plan. They withdrew support. They paused trade. They questioned motives. They asked if this was still about security, or if it had become something else, something darker, something final. This is not how wars are fought. This is not how enemies are defeated. This is how populations are erased. This is how history is buried. This is how genocide begins. Not with gas, not with trains, but with slow suffocation. With controlled hunger, with calculated displacement, with deliberate destruction, with daily death, with denial, with defiance, with diplomacy that hides crime, with power that excuses horror. Enough. Enough of the lies. Enough of the delay. Enough of the excuses. Enough of the silence. We must name this for what it is. We must call it out what it looks like. We must act before it is too late. Because if we do not speak now, if we do not stand now, then we are complicit. In every bomb, in every bullet, in every broken home, in every orphan child, in every scorched field, in every stolen future, we see it, we know it, we cannot ignore it, and we will not forget it.